They don't belong here." The words, whispered, sliced deeper than any blade. 11-year-old Zora froze, her twin Zadai's hand tightening in hers. Flight attendant Sandra, all pursed lips and icy disdain, blocked their path to the first-class restroom. Just another indignity. But Sandra didn't know about the phone in Vanessa's pocket, recording every biased syllable. A lawyer always collects evidence. More importantly, Sandra underestimated a mother's quiet rage and the fierce love she had for her girls. It's not about money. This is about more than an apology. They have no idea how her quiet kindness will change everything. The first-class cabin had fallen silent, passengers frozen mid-sip, flight attendants rigid with sudden apprehension. In her hand, Vanessa clutched her phone like a weapon, its screen illuminated with damning evidence. Her daughters, Zora and Zadie, 11 years old with matching braids and wide, searching eyes, stood beside her, their small hands finding each other's in a practiced gesture of twin solidarity. "I want everyone on this aircraft to hear what I'm about to say," Vanessa announced, her voice steady despite the tremor of rage she suppressed. 10 minutes ago, my daughters were denied access to this restroom because, according to your flight attendant, they don't belong up here. She turned her gaze directly to flight attendant Sandra Wheeler, whose pale face had drained of color. "But what your employee didn't realize was that I had already started recording our conversation after the first incident. So I have evidence of not just denial of service, but the exact words she used when she thought I couldn't hear her speaking to her colleague." Captain James Harrington emerged from the cockpit, his weathered face a mask of professional concern, but it was already too late. What had begun as a routine cross-country flight was about to become a nationwide scandal that would bring an entire airline to its knees. But to understand how they arrived at this moment of reckoning, we need to go back to where it all began 3 hours earlier, when the Richardson family boarded Atlantic Skylines Flight 1382 from Atlanta to San Francisco. Vanessa Richardson checked her watch as she guided her daughters through Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport's crowded concourse. At 42, she carried herself with the poised efficiency of someone accustomed to managing multiple priorities. Her corporate attorney briefcase hung from one shoulder, counterbalanced by a tote containing snacks, tablets, and the various necessities for keeping 11-year-old twins occupied during a 5-hour flight. "Mum, are we really sitting in first class?" Zora asked, bouncing slightly as they approached the gate. "Yes, sweetheart. The firm is covering it since I have to review case files during the flight." Vanessa smiled down at her daughter, whose excitement was contagious. After 15 years of climbing the corporate ladder at Patterson and Good Law, she'd finally made partner 6 months ago. The promotion had come with perks like premium travel for work trips, even when she brought family along. Zadeh, the more reserved of the twins, squeezed her mother's hand. "Will there be those warm cookies they talk about on the commercials?" "Absolutely. And hot towels." Vanessa winked, enjoying her daughter's anticipation. This San Francisco trip was special, half business for her, half educational vacation for the girls. They would visit her client's tech headquarters in Silicon Valley, then spend the weekend exploring museums and enjoying the Bay Area's treasures. The boarding process went smoothly. Priority access, allowing them to settle into the spacious first-class cabin before the main cabin passengers began filing past. Vanessa helped the girls buckle into their plush seats beside the window and middle of the first row, while she took the aisle seat. "This is definitely better than those tiny seats in the back," Zora declared, testing the recline function with unrestrained delight. "Remember our airplane manners," Vanessa reminded gently. "First class or not, we're still representing the Richardson family." "Yes, Mom," the twins responded in unison, straightening up slightly, but unable to suppress their grins. Flight attendant Sandra Wheeler approached with a practice smile, offering pre-takeoff beverages. "Good afternoon and welcome to Atlantic Skylines. What may I get for you today?" "Apple juice, please," Zora requested. "The same for me," added Zadai politely. "And I'll take sparkling water with lime." "Thank you," Vanessa said. Sandra nodded and moved to the galley to prepare their drinks. Vanessa didn't miss the slight hesitation in the flight attendant's smile when she approached their row. A momentary flicker she'd grown accustomed to recognizing throughout her life and career. As the only black family in the first-class cabin, Vanessa had long ago developed a sixth sense for these micro-expressions. Usually she would let them slide, picking her battles carefully. Today was about giving her daughters a special experience, not confronting every subtle instance of bias. When Sandra returned with their drinks, she served the businessman across the aisle first, though he had boarded after them. Another small slight, perhaps unconscious. Vanessa accepted her sparkling water with a polite thank you and turned her attention to helping Zadai with her tray table. The boarding completed, and the plane began its taxi toward the runway. Captain James Harrington's voice came over the intercom, delivering the standard welcome and flight information in a deep, authoritative tone. Cruising altitude of 37,000 Sachsenheft. Expected arrival in San Francisco at approximately 7:45 p.m. local time. Clear conditions expected throughout our journey. As the plane accelerated down the runway, Zora and Zadai exchanged excited glances, their hands finding each other's as they always did during takeoff. Vanessa smiled at the familiar gesture. Since infancy, the twins had sought physical connection during moments of intensity, a silent communication system only they fully understood. Once they reached cruising altitude, the cabin settled into the rhythm of long-haul flight. Vanessa retrieved her laptop and began reviewing documents for her upcoming presentation. The girls alternated between watching movies on their tablets and gazing out the window at the patchwork landscape far below. About an hour into the flight, Sandra and another flight attendant, Marcus Chen, began the meal service. Marcus, younger and more energetic than Sandra, seemed genuinely warm as he laid linen napkins across passengers' tray tables. "We have a choice of grilled chicken with roasted vegetables or vegetarian pasta today," Marcus announced as he reached their row. "May I have the pasta, please?" Zadai asked. "Chicken for me," said Zora. "I'll try the chicken as well, thank you," Vanessa added. The meal was served elegantly on real china with metal cutlery, a far cry from the plastic-wrapped sandwiches they were accustomed to in economy. The girls savored each bite, occasionally exchanging forkfuls to compare dishes. "Mum, this is the best airplane food ever," Zora declared between bites of succulent chicken. "It's actually good," agreed Zadai, twirling pasta around her fork with obvious enjoyment. Vanessa watched her daughters with quiet pride. Despite their excitement, they maintained the table manners she had instilled in them. Napkins on laps, elbows off the table, small disciplines that she hoped would serve them well in a world that would often judge them more harshly than their peers. After the meal service, Marcus came by with warm cookies as promised. The rich chocolate chip aroma filled their row as he placed the treats on their trays with a flourish. "Careful, they're fresh from the oven," he warned with a friendly wink to the twins. "Thank you." They chirped in synchronized appreciation. Sandra, meanwhile, seemed to focus her attentions primarily on the rows behind them, where several older white executives were seated. Her interactions there lasted longer, included more smiles, more offers of additional services. Vanessa noted these discrepancies without comment, continuing her work while occasionally helping the girls with their entertainment systems. Approximately 2 hours into the flight, Zadai leaned over to her mother. "Mum, I need to use the restroom," she whispered. "Me too," Zora added, never far behind her sister's needs. Vanessa checked her watch. "All right, the seatbelt sign is off. The first-class lavatory is right up front. Do you want me to come with you?" Zadeh shook her head. "We're 11 now, Mum. We can go to the bathroom by ourselves." "You're right. Just remember one at a time, and come straight back." The twins nodded solemnly, and Zora stood first, making her way to the lavatory at the front of the first-class cabin. Vanessa watched as her daughter approached the vacant restroom, then returned to reviewing a contract clause that had been troubling her. A few minutes later, Zora returned, and Zadeh stood to take her turn. Vanessa was highlighting a section of text when she heard a sharp, authoritative voice from the front of the cabin. "Excuse me, young lady. That restroom is for first-class passengers only." Vanessa's head snapped up to see Sandra blocking Zadeh's path to the lavatory, one arm extended to physically prevent her daughter from proceeding. Zadeh had frozen, her expression a mix of confusion and embarrassment as other passengers glanced up from their activities. "But I am in first class," Zadeh responded, her voice small but clear. Sandra's eyebrows arched in obvious disbelief. "Really? And where is your seat?" "Row 1, seat B," Zadeh answered promptly, pointing back toward where Vanessa and Zora sat. Sandra made no move to step aside. "Are you traveling with an adult?" By now, Vanessa was already unbuckling her seatbelt, a familiar heat rising in her chest, the maternal instinct to protect, combined with the weary recognition of a situation she had hoped her daughters might be spared, at least until they were older. "She's with me," Vanessa stated firmly, standing beside her daughter. "We're seated in Quota 1A, B, and C." Sandra's expression shifted subtly, registering surprise, followed by something that looked like skepticism. "I see. I wasn't aware these were your children." The slight pause before children hung in the air between them, loaded with implication. Vanessa felt Zadeh press slightly closer to her side. "Yes, my daughters and I are traveling together in first class. Now, if you'll excuse her, she needs to use the restroom." After a moment's hesitation, Sandra stepped aside, allowing Zadeh to enter the lavatory. She didn't offer the apology that should have naturally followed such an interaction. "Is there a problem with my daughters using the first-class facilities?" Vanessa asked quietly, keeping her voice level despite the simmering anger she felt. "No problem at all. I simply wasn't aware they were first-class passengers," Sandra replied with a tight smile. "I need to check on other passengers now." As the flight attendant moved away, Vanessa remained standing, waiting for Zadeh to emerge from the restroom. The incident had lasted less than a minute, but its significance weighed heavily. This was far from the first time Vanessa had encountered assumptions based on race, but witnessing her daughter face it so directly stirred a deeper pain. When Zadeh emerged, her usual confidence had dimmed. "Did I do something wrong, Mum?" she whispered as they walked back to their seats. "Absolutely not, sweetheart. You belonged exactly where you were." Vanessa squeezed her daughter's shoulder reassuringly, her attorney's mind already cataloguing the interaction, noting details, considering implications. Back in their seats, Zora immediately sensed her twins' discomfort. "What happened?" As Zadeh quietly explained, Vanessa observed the flight attendants at the front galley. Sandra was speaking to Marcus in hushed tones, occasionally glancing in their direction. Though Vanessa couldn't hear their conversation, years of reading body language in courtrooms and boardrooms told her that Sandra was not expressing regret for the misunderstanding. Vanessa made a decision. She reached for her phone and opened the voice recorder app. If another incident occurred, she wanted documentation. As an attorney, she knew the power of evidence, how quickly your word against mine could dissolve in the face of recorded proof. The next hour passed without incident. the twins returned to their movies. Though Vanessa noticed they were quieter now, some of the joy of the first-class experience diminished. She continued working, but part of her attention remained fixed on the flight attendants' movements, particularly Sandra's. When the drink service came around again, Marcus was the one who attended to their row. "Can I get you ladies anything else? Perhaps another sparkling water or juice?" "Yes, please." "Sparkling water for me, and maybe some ginger ale for the girls," Vanessa requested. "Coming right up," Marcus replied cheerfully as he prepared their drinks in the galley. Vanessa observed Sandra approach him, whisper something, and take over the preparation. Marcus seemed to hesitate, but then moved on to other tasks. Sandra delivered their drinks with a professional but cool demeanor. "Your beverages," she stated simply, placing them on their trays without the customary napkins provided to other first-class passengers. "Thank you," Vanessa responded, maintaining her composure. "By the way, I wanted to address what happened earlier with my daughter and the restroom." "There's nothing to address," Sandra interrupted. "It was a misunderstanding. If you'll excuse me, I have other passengers to attend to." As Sandra walked away, Vanessa noticed the businessman across the aisle, watching the interaction with furrowed brows. He caught her eye and gave a small headshake, a silent acknowledgement that he had witnessed something inappropriate. Another hour passed. The twins had fallen asleep, Zora's head resting on Zaid's shoulder in their usual mirrored comfort. Vanessa had just closed her laptop, deciding to rest her eyes as well, when she noticed Zadi stirring. "Mum," Zadi whispered, fully awake now. "I need to use the bathroom again." Vanessa checked her watch. About an hour and a half remained in their flight. "Okay, sweetheart. I'll come with you this time. I can go by myself," Zadi insisted, her expression determined. Vanessa recognized the look, the same quiet resilience she often saw in the mirror. "Are you sure?" "Yes. I belong in first class, too." Zaid's words carried a weight beyond her years, a lesson in dignity Vanessa wished she didn't have to learn so young. "All right. I'll be right here if you need me." Vanessa watched as Zade made her way forward. This time, Sandra was not in the galley, and Zade entered the restroom without incident. Vanessa began to relax slightly, hoping the earlier situation had truly been a misunderstanding. Her relief was short-lived as she saw Zade emerge from the lavatory. Vanessa also spotted Sandra returning to the first-class cabin from the main cabin. The flight attendant's steps faltered when she saw Zade, and then she quickened her pace. "Excuse me." Sandra's voice carried clearly down the aisle. "Did you just use this restroom?" Zadi nodded, visibly tensing. "Yes, ma'am. I thought I explained earlier that Vanessa was already on her feet, phone in hand, voice recorder discreetly activated. Is there a problem with my daughter using the restroom for which we have paid and are entitled to use?" Sandra's expression hardened. "Ms. Richardson, I'm simply trying to ensure that all passengers understand the cabin divisions. Sometimes children wander." "My daughters don't wander," Vanessa interrupted, her professional courtroom voice emerging. "They are seated in first class, as am I. They are entitled to use the first-class lavatory. I'd appreciate it if you would stop questioning their presence here." Several passengers were now watching the exchange openly. Sandra seemed to register the audience and modulated her tone. Of course, as I said, it was merely a misunderstanding. She turned and retreated to the galley where Marcus was arranging glasses on a tray. Vanessa guided Zade back to their seats, maintaining her composure for her daughter's sake. Once settled, she kept her phone recording and watched as Sandra engaged in an animated conversation with Marcus in the galley. Though they spoke in hushed tones, the small first-class cabin carried sound well enough for certain phrases to reach Vanessa's ears and her recording device. "Shouldn't even be up here." Probably used miles or something, keeping an eye on them. Vanessa felt a cold clarity descend over her. The situation had moved beyond microaggressions into something explicitly discriminatory. She stopped the recording and replayed it quietly, ensuring that Sandra's words had been captured. They had been. Just then, the seatbelt sign illuminated, accompanied by the captain's voice. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're beginning our initial descent into the San Francisco area. Flight attendants, please prepare the cabin for arrival." Sandra and Marcus moved through the cabin, checking that seats were upright and tray tables stowed. When Sandra reached their row, her customer service smile was back in place, though it didn't reach her eyes. "Please make sure your seats are in the upright position and all electronic devices are stowed for landing," she instructed mechanically. "Before we land," Vanessa said calmly, "I'd like to speak with the captain." Sandra's smile faltered. "The captain is preparing for landing. Ma'am, if you have a concern, I'd be happy to address it after we're on the ground. My concern is about discriminatory treatment by a flight attendant toward my children. I believe that warrants the captain's attention, particularly since I have recorded evidence of this treatment." At the mention of a recording, Sandra's professional mask slipped completely. "Recording crew members is against airline policy." "Actually, it isn't," Vanessa corrected her. "I've reviewed Atlantic Skyline's terms of service quite thoroughly. There's no prohibition against passengers recording interactions when they believe discrimination is occurring. Now, I'd like to speak with the captain, please." Marcus, who had been working nearby and overheard the exchange, approached with concern. "Perhaps I can help resolve this situation." "The situation," Vanessa replied evenly, "is that my daughters have been repeatedly questioned about their right to use first-class facilities, despite being ticketed first-class passengers. I have recorded comments suggesting this treatment is racially motivated, and I would like to address this with the captain before we land." Marcus's expression grew serious. "I'll see if the captain can speak with you after we land. In the meantime, I apologize for any misunderstanding." "This isn't a misunderstanding," Vanessa clarified. "It's discrimination, and it will be addressed." By now, Zora had awakened and was listening intently. Both twins sat straight back in their seats, absorbing every word of the confrontation, learning from their mother's composed but unwavering stance. As the plane began its final approach, a tense silence enveloped their section of the cabin. Other passengers darted glances between Vanessa and the flight attendants, the atmosphere charged with unresolved conflict. When they touched down at San Francisco International Airport, the captain's voice came over the intercom again. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to San Francisco. Local time is 7:38 p.m., and the temperature is a pleasant 65 degrees. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened until we reach the gate and the seatbelt sign has been turned off." As the aircraft taxied to the terminal, Vanessa could see Marcus speaking to Sandra near the cockpit door, their conversation appearing heated despite their lowered voices. When the plane finally reached the gate and the seatbelt sign turned off, passengers began the usual ritual of retrieving belongings and preparing to deplane. "Ladies and gentlemen, we ask that you please remain seated for a moment," came the captain's voice again. "We'll begin disembarking shortly." The cockpit door opened and Captain James Harrington emerged. In his mid-50s, with salt and pepper hair and the confident bearing of a man who had spent decades in command, he surveyed the cabin briefly before approaching the galley where Sandra and Marcus stood. After a brief, inaudible conversation, he turned and walked directly to Vanessa's row. "Ms. Richardson, I'm Captain Harrington. I understand there's been an issue that you'd like to discuss." "Yes, Captain. My daughters have been repeatedly questioned about their right to use the first-class lavatory, despite being ticketed first-class passengers. I've recorded comments from your flight attendant that suggest this treatment is racially motivated." The captain's expression remained professionally neutral, but his eyes reflected concern. "That's a serious allegation. Would you be willing to discuss this privately once the other passengers have deplaned?" "Yes, but I want my daughters with me. They experienced this firsthand." Captain Harrington nodded. "Of course, if you could remain seated until the other passengers have deplaned, we can discuss this matter thoroughly." As the other passengers filed out, many cast curious glances toward their row. The businessman who had been seated across the aisle paused as he retrieved his briefcase. "Ma'am, I couldn't help overhearing earlier. For what it's worth, I witnessed the first interaction, and it was completely inappropriate. If you need a statement from another passenger, I'd be happy to provide my contact information." "Thank you," Vanessa replied, genuinely appreciative of the allyship. They exchanged business cards quickly before he continued toward the exit. When the last passenger had deplaned, Captain Harrington returned to their row. Sandra and Marcus remained near the galley. Sandra's face now flushed with what appeared to be a mixture of defensiveness and apprehension. "Now, Miss Richardson, could you tell me exactly what occurred?" the captain asked, taking a seat across the aisle. Vanessa recounted the series of events methodically, her legal training evident in the precise chronological narrative. She described both incidents with the lavatory, Sandra's comments, and the distinct difference in service quality they had received compared to other first-class passengers. "I have a recording of Miss Wheeler's comments to her colleague, which clearly indicate bias," Vanessa concluded, holding up her phone. "She stated that we shouldn't even be up here, and suggested we had used miles rather than paid for our tickets, which is irrelevant in any case." Captain Harrington's expression had grown increasingly grave as Vanessa spoke. He turned to the flight attendants. "Miss Wheeler, would you care to respond to these allegations?" Sandra stepped forward, her professional demeanor brittle around the edges. "Captain, there has been a misunderstanding. I was simply enforcing cabin boundaries as we're trained to do. I had no way of knowing these children were first-class passengers when they approached the lavatory unaccompanied. Yet, after being informed of their status, you questioned my daughter a second time," Vanessa pointed out, "and your comments to your colleague, which I recorded, clearly indicate bias." "Those comments were taken out of context," Sandra insisted. "I was referring to children in general, not specifically." "I'd like to hear the recording," Captain Harrington interjected. Vanessa played the audio. Sandra's voice emerged clearly from the phone speaker. "Shouldn't even be up here. Probably used miles or something, keeping an eye on them." The captain listened without expression, then turned to Sandra. "Miss Wheeler, please wait for me in the cockpit. Mr. Chen, you as well." His tone left no room for argument. After the flight attendants had retreated, Captain Harrington addressed Vanessa directly. "Ms. Richardson, on behalf of Atlantic Skylines, I want to offer my sincere apologies for the treatment you and your daughters experienced today. This falls far short of our service standards and our values as an airline. I appreciate that, Captain, but an apology isn't sufficient. I want to ensure that appropriate action is taken and that this incident is documented properly. I understand completely. I'll be filing a full report, and I would encourage you to contact our customer relations department." He handed her a card with contact information. "I'll provide them with my own account as well." Vanessa slipped the card into her purse. "Thank you, Captain. There's one more thing." "Yes. I'd like your assurance that Ms. Wheeler will not be working our return flight next week." Captain Harrington nodded solemnly. "I can certainly arrange that." "Again, Miss Richardson, I deeply regret that you and your daughters had this experience." Vanessa turned to the twins, who had been watching the exchange with solemn attention. "Girls, is there anything you'd like to say to the captain?" Zadeh, ever the more contemplative twins, spoke first. Why did she think we didn't belong here? The directness of the child's question seemed to catch the captain off guard. He considered his response carefully. Sometimes people make wrong assumptions based on how others look. It's not right, and it's not what our airline stands for. Zora chimed in, her tone more indignant than her sister's. "But we had the same tickets as everyone else. We followed all the rules." "You absolutely did," Captain Harrington affirmed. "And you had every right to be treated with the same respect as any other passenger." "I'm truly sorry that didn't happen today." As they gathered their belongings to deplane, Vanessa felt a mixture of emotions: pride in her daughter's dignity, lingering anger at the treatment they had received, and a firm resolve to ensure accountability. The captain escorted them to the jet bridge, where a customer service representative was already waiting. "Ms. Richardson, I'm Michael Torres, Customer Service Manager for Atlantic Skylines at SFO. Captain Harrington contacted me about your experience. We've arranged for premium car service to take you to your hotel, and I'd like to personally assist you with filing a formal complaint." Vanessa nodded appreciatively, but maintained her professional demeanor. "Thank you, Mr. Torres. I'll also be following up with your corporate offices regarding this incident." As they were escorted through the terminal, Zora tugged at her mother's sleeve. "Mum, are you going to sue the airline like you do with your clients?" Vanessa considered the question thoughtfully. "Not necessarily, sweetheart. Sometimes accountability can be achieved without litigation. What matters is that we stand up for ourselves when we're treated unfairly." "Like you did on the plane?" Zadeh asked. "Like we all did," Vanessa corrected, squeezing both girls' hands. "I'm very proud of how you both handled yourselves today." As they settled into the luxury car sent by the airline, Zadeh gazed out at the San Francisco skyline emerging in the distance. "Mum, do you think things will be different someday, so kids like us don't have to worry about this stuff?" The question hung in the air, weighty with history and hope. Vanessa put her arms around her daughters, drawing them close. "I think it depends on people being willing to speak up, just like we did today. Change happens one stand at a time." The car glided through the evening traffic, carrying them toward their hotel. Tomorrow would bring meetings and museums, the planned combination of work and exploration. But tonight had brought an unplanned lesson, one about dignity, justice, and the quiet power of standing your ground. What none of them realized yet was that their story was far from over. The recording Vanessa had made would soon find its way into a larger conversation about race, privilege, and accountability in America. Atlantic Skylines was about to face a reckoning they never saw coming, all because they underestimated a mother's determination to protect her children and teach them that they belonged everywhere. Their tickets, talents, and dreams could take them. The following morning, Vanessa woke early in their hotel suite at the San Francisco Grand Hyatt. Sunlight filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the spacious room where the twins still slept peacefully in their queen-sized bed. She moved quietly to the desk, opened her laptop, and began composing an email to her firm's partners explaining the incident on the flight. As an attorney specializing in corporate law, Vanessa typically handled complex business transactions rather than discrimination cases, but her legal training provided a framework for addressing what had happened systematically. She knew documenting everything promptly was essential. After sending the email, she opened Twitter and began typing a thread, her fingers moving with deliberate precision. Yesterday, my 11-year-old twin daughters were repeatedly denied access to first-class restrooms on Atlantic Skylines, Flight 1382, despite having first-class tickets. When questioned, I recorded the flight attendant saying, "We shouldn't even be up here flying while black." She attached a screenshot of their boarding passes and continued the thread detailing the incidents chronologically without embellishment. She ended with, "I'm sharing this not for compensation, but for accountability. No child should be made to feel they don't belong in spaces they have every right to occupy." Vanessa hesitated before pressing tweet. Public call-outs weren't typically her style. She preferred working through official channels. But something about this situation, about the look in Zaid's eyes when she asked if things would ever be different, compelled her to share their experience more broadly. She clicked tweet and set her phone aside, not expecting much response. Then she showered and dressed for her 10 a.m. meeting with Neurotech Innovations, the client whose offices they would visit before their weekend of exploration began. By the time the twins awakened, Vanessa was already on her second cup of coffee, reviewing presentation notes. "Good morning, sleepyheads," she greeted, as Zora and Zadeh emerged from their blanket cocoon, hair tousled from sleep. "How about room service for breakfast before we head out?" "Pancakes?" Zora asked hopefully. "With extra strawberries," Vanessa confirmed, reaching for the room service menu. As they ate breakfast by the window overlooking the bay, Vanessa's phone began buzzing with notifications. She glanced down, expecting work emails, and was surprised to see dozens of Twitter notifications. Her thread had begun to gain traction, with hundreds of retweets and supportive comments already. "What's happening, Mum?" Zadeh asked, noticing her mother's distracted expression. "Remember how we talked about speaking up when something isn't right?" "Well, I shared our experience online, and it seems a lot of people are listening." The twins exchanged glances, their silent twin communication passing between them. "Are we going to be on the news?" Zora asked, both excitement and apprehension in her voice. "I don't think so, sweetheart. This is just people on social media talking about what happened." Vanessa set her phone aside, focusing on her daughters. "Today is about your first visit to a real tech company. Remember, we have a tour of NeuroX labs, and then they have that cool, interactive exhibit specifically designed for kids. If you're watching this video now, I'd love to hear where you're viewing from. Drop a comment below, letting me know what city or country you're in. And don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. Every subscription helps support these important stories being told." The morning progressed according to plan. The twins marveled at Neurotech's sleek headquarters, especially enjoying the youth STEM lab where they could experiment with simple robotics. Vanessa's presentation to the company's legal team went smoothly, her professional demeanor betraying nothing of the previous day's turmoil. During lunch in the company cafeteria, however, her phone rang with a call from Patricia Good, the senior partner at her firm. "Vanessa, I've just seen your Twitter thread." "It's gone viral," Patricia informed her without preamble. "CNN has picked it up, and Atlantic Skyline stock dropped 4 points this morning." Vanessa nearly choked on her sparkling water. "What? I had no idea it would spread so quickly. Your recording is what did it?" Someone with sound engineering skills cleaned up the audio and amplified the flight attendant's comments. "It's crystal clear now and damning. The airline's PR team has been trying to reach you." "I haven't even checked my email since this morning," Vanessa admitted, glancing at the twins who were happily eating their gourmet cafeteria pizzas, oblivious to the storm brewing around their experience. "Well, you might want to. They've offered a settlement already, quite generous from what I understand. But there's something else you should know." "What's that?" "Your thread has resonated far beyond this single incident. People are sharing their own experiences with the airline using your hashtag. There are hundreds of them, Vanessa. This could become a class action situation. Vanessa fell silent, processing the implications. What had begun as a stand for her daughter's dignity was rapidly evolving into something much larger. I need to think about this, Patricia. My priority is protecting the girls while making sure there's accountability. Of course, take the weekend with your daughters as planned, but be prepared. Journalists will likely try to contact you. If you'd like, I can have our PR team run interference. I'd appreciate that. Let me get through today's meetings first, and I'll call you this evening. After hanging up, Vanessa quickly scrolled through her notifications. The numbers were staggering. Her original thread had been shared over 50,000 times in less than 12 hours. News outlets had picked up the story with headlines like "Mother Records, Discrimination Against Twin Daughters on Flight, and Atlantic Skylines Under Fire for Treatment of Black Family in First Class." What caught her attention most, however, were the personal messages. Hundreds of people sharing similar experiences, not just with this airline, but with everyday discrimination in spaces where they were perceived as not belonging. One message in particular stood out. "Miss Richardson, I'm Janet Cooper, a former flight attendant trainer for Atlantic Skylines. What happened to your family is not an isolated incident, but reflective of systemic issues in our training. I have documentation. Would you be willing to speak with me?" Vanessa flagged the message to return to later, then put her phone away as her client approached to escort them to the afternoon session. She needed to maintain her professional focus despite the whirlwind developing around them. That evening, back at the hotel, Vanessa sat on the balcony while the twins swam in the rooftop pool under the supervision of a hotel lifeguard. The San Francisco skyline glittered before her as she finally returned to her phone to assess the full scope of what had happened. Atlantic Skylines had issued a formal statement. "We are deeply concerned by the reported experience of a family on one of our flights yesterday. We have a zero-tolerance policy for discrimination of any kind. We are investigating this matter thoroughly and have placed the crew member in question on administrative leave pending the outcome. We are in contact with the family to address this situation directly." The statement rang hollow to Vanessa, particularly since no one from the airline had actually spoken with her directly, only through intermediaries offering settlements with confidentiality clauses. She scrolled through more messages, pausing when she saw one from Marcus Chen, the other flight attendant from their flight. "Ms. Richardson, I witnessed what happened to your family yesterday, and want you to know I've provided my own statement to management and human resources. This wasn't the first incident involving Ms. Wheeler, but hopefully it will be the last. If you need a witness, I'm willing to speak up." His courage in breaking ranks impressed her. She composed a brief, appreciative reply, saving his contact information. As the evening progressed, Vanessa spoke with Patricia again, discussing strategy. They agreed that Vanessa would not accept any settlement that included a non-disclosure agreement. The issue was too important, the implications too widespread to be silenced by financial compensation. When the twins returned from swimming, wrapped in plush hotel robes and chattering excitedly about their pool adventures, Vanessa set aside the complexities of the situation to focus on them. "How about we order some dessert and watch a movie?" she suggested. "Can we have ice cream sundaes?" Zora asked. "With extra hot fudge?" Vanessa agreed, reaching for the room service menu. As they settled in for their movie night, Zadai curled against her mother's side. "Mum, did something happen today? You were looking at your phone a lot." Vanessa marveled at her daughter's perceptiveness. "Remember when I told you that speaking up can make a difference? Well, it seems a lot of people heard us." "Good," Zede said simply. Maybe that flight attendant will be nicer to the next kids. And maybe the airline will make sure all their flight attendants are nicer, added Zora. That's exactly the point, Vanessa affirmed, hugging them both close. Later that night, after the twins had fallen asleep, Vanessa responded to Janet Cooper, the former flight attendant trainer who had reached out. They arranged to meet for coffee the following afternoon, while the twins explored the exploratorium. With a guide, Vanessa had hired a college student studying physics who had been recommended by the hotel concierge. The next morning brought more developments. Atlantic Skyline CEO Richard Pearson had issued a video statement apologizing for the incident and announcing a comprehensive review of their customer service training with specific attention to unconscious bias. The company's stock had fallen further, and competitors were already capitalizing on the situation with social media campaigns emphasizing their commitment to inclusivity. What surprised Vanessa most, however, was the email that arrived from an unexpected source, Sandra Wheeler. Ms. Richardson, it began, I am writing to offer my personal apology for my treatment of your family on Flight 1382. While it does not excuse my behavior, I want you to know that I have been reflecting deeply on my actions and the biases that informed them. I am seeking professional help to address these issues and am committed to making amends. I understand if you cannot forgive me, but I wanted you to know that your stand has had a profound impact. The message seemed sincere, yet Vanessa approached it with caution. Years of legal practice had taught her that remorse often emerged most strongly when consequences loomed. Still, she appreciated the direct acknowledgement, which was more than the airline's corporate statement had offered. At 2:00 p.m., while the twins were engaged in hands-on science exhibits across town, Vanessa met Janet Cooper at a quiet cafe near Union Square. Janet was in her early 60s, with silver-streaked dark hair and the confident posture of someone who had spent decades instructing others on proper carriage. Thank you for meeting with me, Janet began, after they had exchanged introductions and ordered coffee. What happened to your family was inexcusable, but unfortunately not surprising to those of us who know the culture inside Atlantic Skylines. What can you tell me about that culture? Vanessa asked, her attorney's instinct for gathering information taking over. Janet placed a thumb drive on the table between them. I was a training supervisor for 15 years before taking early retirement last year. During that time, I documented numerous instances where diversity training was undermined by upper management or treated as a mere checkbox exercise. She explained how budget cuts had repeatedly targeted cultural sensitivity programs first, how complaints about discriminatory treatment were often buried in bureaucracy, and how certain trainers who emphasized these issues found themselves sidelined professionally. The most troubling part, Janet continued, was the data we collected but never acted upon. Our own customer satisfaction surveys showed a consistent pattern. Black and brown passengers rated their experiences significantly lower than white passengers, even in identical seating classes. When I presented this information to the executive team, I was told to focus on the average customer experience instead. Vanessa listened intently, recognizing the familiar pattern of systemic issues masked by corporate doublespeak. Do you have documentation of these surveys? Janet nodded toward the thumb drive. Everything's there. Surveys, training materials, internal emails discussing these issues, and my own notes from meetings where these concerns were raised and dismissed. I kept it all because I knew someday it would matter. Why are you sharing this with me now? Vanessa asked, though she already suspected the answer. Because your daughters deserve better. Because all our customers deserved better than what the company was willing to provide. And because your stand creates an opportunity for real change that my years of internal advocacy never accomplished. Vanessa picked up the thumb drive, its small weight significant in her palm. I'll review these materials carefully. Thank you for your courage in coming forward. As they parted ways, Janet offered one final comment. You know, in my decades of training flight attendants, the best ones all understood a fundamental truth. Hospitality means making people feel they belong, not questioning whether they do. The words stayed with Vanessa as she made her way to the exploratorium to meet her daughters. The simple wisdom resonated with what she wanted most for her children, a world where their belonging was assumed rather than questioned. When she arrived at the museum, she found the twins engrossed in an exhibit about wave patterns, their guide explaining the physics with animated enthusiasm. Watching them absorb knowledge with such joy, their faces alight with discovery, Vanessa felt both fierce protection and profound hope. These bright, curious girls deserved every opportunity, every experience, every space they would ever wish to occupy. As they explored the museum together for another hour, Vanessa's phone continued to buzz with notifications, but she ignored it, focusing entirely on the present moment with her daughters. The ripples from their flight would continue to spread, but this weekend was for them. That evening, after a dinner of Gardelli sundaes, ice cream for dinner being a special vacation treat, they returned to their hotel room to find a large gift basket waiting. The card bore the Atlantic Skylines logo and a handwritten note from CEO Richard Pearson. We deeply regret your experience and would appreciate the opportunity to make amends. Please call me at your convenience. Zora examined the basket's contents: luxury chocolates, plush travel pillows, and 3 vouchers for free first-class flights. Are we going to use these, Mum? Vanessa considered the question thoughtfully. What do you think we should do? The twins exchanged one of their silent communications before Zadi answered. Maybe we should see if they're really going to change things first. Yeah, Zora added. Free stuff doesn't fix what happened. Vanessa smiled, pride warming her chest. That's very wise. We won't make any decisions yet. Later that night, after reviewing the documents Janet had provided, Vanessa drafted a careful email to Richard Pearson. She didn't mention the thumb drive or its contents, but requested a meeting upon their return to Atlanta, not to discuss compensation, but to address specific policy changes that would prevent similar incidents for future passengers. She concluded with, "My daughters are watching how this situation is resolved. They're learning important lessons about accountability, justice, and the power of speaking up. I hope Atlantic Skylines will provide them with a positive example of how institutions can acknowledge failures and commit to meaningful change." After sending the email, she checked Twitter one last time before bed. Her original thread had now been viewed over 3 million times. The hashtag #hashflying, while Black had thousands of entries with people sharing similar experiences across multiple airlines and in airport terminals around the world. What had begun as a personal stand for her daughters had catalyzed a broader conversation about belonging and respect in public spaces. As she looked at the sleeping twins, their expressions peaceful in the dim light of the hotel room, Vanessa felt the weight of both responsibility and possibility. The journey that had begun in the first-class cabin of Flight 1382 was far from over. The Richardson family's return flight to Atlanta on Sunday was markedly different from their outbound journey. Atlantic Skylines had upgraded them to the larger first-class seats on the aircraft, typically reserved for international flights. The crew had clearly been briefed. The service was impeccable to the point of being almost uncomfortably solicitous. Captain Reynolds, a black woman in her 40s, had personally greeted them during boarding. "Ms. Richardson, we're honored to have you and your daughters aboard today. Please let me know if there's anything at all you need during our flight." The gesture was meaningful, though Vanessa suspected it was not coincidental that a black female captain had been assigned to their return flight. Throughout the journey, other passengers occasionally glanced their way, some with expressions of recognition. Their story had spread widely enough that they were now identifiable to strangers. By the time they landed in Atlanta, Vanessa had received confirmation that CEO Richard Pearson would meet with her the following week. She had also been contacted by the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, who expressed interest in the broader implications of the case, and by 3 major news outlets requesting interviews. The twins, meanwhile, had enjoyed their upgraded travel experience, but seemed more focused on telling their father about the exploratorium and the sea lions at Pier 39 than on the growing attention surrounding their flight incident. Their resilience and ability to process the experience while not being defined by it impressed Vanessa deeply. Marcus Chen had also sent another message, informing Vanessa that he had provided a formal statement to both Atlantic Skylines Management and the Department of Transportation, which had opened an inquiry into the incident. His willingness to potentially jeopardize his career by speaking out reinforced Vanessa's determination to ensure that systemic changes would result from their experience. On Monday morning, Vanessa returned to her office at Patterson, and good to find her colleagues aware of and supportive about the situation. Patricia Good had briefed the partners, and the firm had offered their full legal resources if Vanessa chose to pursue further action beyond her meeting with the CEO. "The firm stands behind you completely," Patricia assured her during their morning check-in. "Whether you decide to pursue this as a private matter or take it further, we're with you every step of the way." "Thank you. I'm still determining the best approach," Vanessa replied. "My primary concern is creating meaningful change, not just for my family, but for others who might face similar situations." "You're in a unique position to make that happen," Patricia observed. "Your legal background, combined with the public attention this has received, gives you significant leverage." Throughout the day, Vanessa alternated between her regular client work and preparing for her meeting with Richard Pearson. She compiled key points from Janet Cooper's documents, identifying patterns of neglect and institutional blindness to diversity issues. She also drafted specific policy recommendations that would address not just flight attendant training, but accountability measures throughout the airline's operation. On Wednesday afternoon, Vanessa entered Atlantic Skylines corporate headquarters in downtown Atlanta. The building's gleaming glass facade and soaring atrium spoke of prosperity and corporate success, a stark contrast to the human failures that had brought her there. Richard Pearson greeted her in the executive conference room, accompanied by the airline's chief legal counsel, Diane Mercer, and their head of customer experience, James Washington, a black man who had been prominently featured in the company's press releases since the incident. "Ms. Richardson, thank you for agreeing to meet with us," Pearson began, his demeanor both businesslike and conciliatory. In his early 60s, with a polished appearance of someone accustomed to boardrooms and media appearances, he projected confident authority. "We deeply regret the experience you and your daughters had on our flight." "Thank you for acknowledging that," Vanessa replied, maintaining her professional composure. "I appreciate your willingness to discuss this matter directly." James Washington leaned forward slightly. "As someone who has experienced similar situations myself, I want to personally assure you that we're taking this incident very seriously. It reflects failures on multiple levels that we're committed to addressing." Vanessa appreciated his candor, but remained cautious. "I'd like to hear specifically how you